Welcome to another fabulous flip lesson from Mr. Moore's classroom. I would like to welcome in Mr. Rockenstein students as well. And today what we're going to be talking about is fractions, and specifically with fractions, parts and totals. So before we do too many problems with the fractions, the first thing I just want to remind you is fractions is just taking parts of equal groups. And when we have a fraction, like let's say if we had the fraction 3/4, just a reminder that when we talk about them, the top number is called the numerator, and then our bottom number is called the denominator as we're going through. So, and the top number talks about the parts of the group that we're doing. The bottom number is the whole of what we're talking about, which leads us into our fraction uh, diagram here. And when we do this, we use it to solve parts and whole problems, trying to figure out fractions. So you saw this last night when you watched the video with Mr. Rockenstein. We're going to have either a whole and a part, which makes a fraction. We're going to have a fraction and a whole, and we need to figure out what the part is, or a fraction and a part, and we make the whole. Today, what we're going to be talking about is when we're given a fraction and a whole, and then we need to figure out what is the part of that whole based on the fraction as we're going through it. So if we were to just take a look at a problem right away, and the question here is, what is 1/3 of 15? So it's giving us the fraction and it's giving us a whole. We have to figure out what is the part. So if I were to use my little grizzly bears here, there are 15 of them. And we know over on the right-hand side, using our parts and whole diagram, we know that the whole is going to be 15 and our fraction is going to be 1/3. So what we're trying to solve is what is the part of this whole. So what is 1/3 of 15? And there's a couple different ways we can go about it. One of the ways is we can turn this 15 into 3 groups because that's what the denominator is. So I can separate these bears and just put them into 3 groups, or for this case, I'm just putting them into 3 lines. And you could be doing this with any type of, with X's on your paper or, circles or anything like that. But now what I've done is I've taken these 15 grizzly bears, and I'll give you a little sound for them. Sounds a little like Zach's stomach right before lunch. But so here's our 15 of them, 1/3 of them. Well, we have 3 groups, so that means 1 out of our 3 groups is going to tell us what 1/3 is. So if I take this, here's 1 out of the 3 groups. Well, how many bears are in 1 out of 3? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the part here is going to be 5. Another way to look at this exact same problem is to do it with equivalent fractions. So I could write 1/3 is the same as what over 15. And in order to solve this, I look at this bottom number. What times 3 equals 15? Well, 3 times 5 equals 15. And now I do the same thing to the top, or the numerator, and I get 5. Same answer as we're doing it here. Neither one is more right than the other. It's just different ways, different suggestions. So another problem, and now the numerator, instead of it being 1, which is just one group, now we're going to talk about it as 2. So it's a different number here. So now we're looking at what's 2/3 of 15. So I thought, oh, well, what could I use for this one? And I said, oh, we'll use some pictures of some people. So we have some pictures of Paige and Callahan and Araceli here. So we have what is 2/3 of 15? Well, we have 15 pictures here, and we talk about, we can do the exact same thing that we just did before. We can divide them into 3 groups. So if we fill in over here, we know our whole is 15 still, and now our fraction is 2/3, but this denominator is still 3. So I'm still going to separate these into 3 groups. So I could do these 3 groups just like this. I can kind of keep the pictures in them, stacking them on top of each other. And we can say, okay, now we have our 3 groups. Well, how many would be in 2 out of those 3 groups? Well, if we look at it, 2 out of the 3 groups would end up having 10. So 2/3 of 15 is 10. And again, we can do an equivalent fraction the same way to solve this. we know 2/3 is equal to how many 15ths? Well, 3 times 5 is 15. So 2 times 5 gives us 10. And there's that same answer. So we can play around with them a little bit, drawing their hair. So just a fun way to look at it. One last problem, just as an example. What is 4/5 of 45? So we're going to take that same work that we just did, use our parts and whole diagram, and we can fill in, we know the whole this time is 45. And our fraction is 4/5. So we're going to try and figure out what is the part, or what is 4/5 of 45. Well, I've got 45 penguins here. You got to trust me. I'll let you listen to what they sound like. Pretty simple. But there's 45 penguins here. So I could divide them into 5 groups. And if we look at this, I'm going to pause it for a second so you don't have to wait for me. All right, so now I've separated it into 5 groups by the magic of pausing. So these 45 penguins are separated into 5 groups because that's our denominator. And so now they're asking how many are in 4 out of those 5 groups. Well, if I were to look at these 4 groups, I know that there are 9 of them in each one of those lines. And so 4 times 9 is going to give me 36. Again, another way to do this, equivalent fraction, 4/5 equals how many 45ths? Well, what times 5 equals 45? And we know because of all our practice that 9 times 5. So now I do the same thing to the numerator that I did to the denominator, and 4 times 9 is 36. So that gets us our answer. Now that we've done all this practice, I'm going to have you do one on your own. And here's, or 2 problems, and you need to bring these answers in tomorrow to class on a piece of paper, or you can submit them on Moodle if you'd like, which it's up there too. So one is, what is 7/8 of 32? And then the other one is, what is 3/7 of 28? So hope you enjoyed the lesson, and hope it helped, and have a great night.